At exactly 3:17 a.m. in the open Pacific, the Combat Information Center aboard a $13.3 billion U.S. aircraft carrier went unnaturally quiet. Not because nothing was happening, because every screen, every operator, every headset suddenly locked onto the same impossible truth. Someone had found them. And whatever was coming wasn't a warning shot, it was a targeting solution. The sea outside was black glass, broken only by the carrier's wake, and the faint glow of deck lights far above. Up on the flight deck, night crews moved with rehearsed precision, their colored jerseys ghosting through red-lit shadows. Jets sat chained and fueled, ready but asleep. Most of the ship's 5,000 sailors didn't know they were seconds away from the most dangerous kind of surprise. The kind that doesn't arrive with a radio call, but with a radar spike. You know, out here, the carrier wasn't alone. It never is. A carrier strike group is a moving fortress. Cruisers and destroyers spaced out like armored knights. Submarines patrolling unseen. Helicopters dipping sonar in the dark. The entire formation existed for one purpose: to keep the supercarrier alive long enough to launch its air wing and rewrite the map. And yet, at 3:17 a.m., the first sign of trouble didn't come from the horizon. It came from above it. A few hundred miles out, high in the darkness, an E-2D Hawkeye, an airborne early warning aircraft often called the fleet's eyes, orbited like a watchful predator. Its mission, by design, is battle management, command and control, an early warning for the carrier strike group, scanning air and sea for threats that shipboard radar can't always see in time. The Hawkeye crew had been tracking normal noise, commercial air traffic, distant weather, the static clutter that never fully disappears. Then, a new return appeared. Not steady, not clean. A faint, unnatural signature that flickered like it was trying not to exist. At first, it looked like a misread, a ghost track, the kind you dismiss after enough long nights. But what happened next shocked everyone. The contact didn't vanish, it multiplied. The Hawkeye's radar picture began to populate with points that made no sense. High-altitude blips, low-altitude skimmers, a fast-moving object that seemed to drop from the sky and then level out. That wasn't a plane, that wasn't a drone. That was the nightmare scenario every carrier crew trains for and hopes they never have to meet in real life. Because in modern naval warfare, you don't have to sink an aircraft carrier to win. You just have to make it flinch. Down in the carrier's CIC, the tactical action officer leaned closer to the main display. The plot was changing too fast now. The track numbers updated in rapid sequence. Range rings tightened. The estimated impact ellipse crept toward the carrier's position like a closing fist. The TAO didn't ask the question out loud, but everyone felt it. Is this real? The carrier strike group's escorts came alive in response. Aegis destroyers, warships built around a centralized, automated command and control and weapons control system designed as an end-to-end chain from detection to kill, began aligning their sensors and fire control solutions. In the dark, out on the water, you couldn't see the destroyers change posture. But inside their combat centers, everything changed. On the carrier, the captain was notified, not with panic, with a tone that meant someone had crossed the line between possible and probable. And the most unsettling part wasn't the track itself. It was how quickly it had appeared. Because a carrier doesn't just get found by accident. It gets found because someone built a chain, a kill chain, linking sensors, analysts, and weapons into a single, smooth process. And if that chain was complete, then the ship wasn't facing a threat. It was facing a decision already made somewhere else. At 3:19 a.m., the strike group shifted toward emissions control. Less talking, less radiating, less signature. The ocean became a silent chessboard. The escorts widened their spacing. The carrier adjusted course, not dramatically, but just enough to complicate prediction. Yet prediction is exactly what modern anti-ship weapons are designed to do. Some people still imagine the carrier killer as a single magic missile, a straight shot, a cinematic fireball. Reality is colder. The most dangerous attacks are layered. First comes the search, then the track, then the handoff, then the strike, sometimes from hundreds, even thousands of miles away. And the crew didn't realize something even worse. The strike might already be in motion. At 3:21 a.m., the Hawkeye crew reported a new clue, an unmistakable signature of a launch far beyond the horizon. A bright, brief bloom in the upper atmosphere, seen indirectly through sensor fusion and track behavior. A ballistic profile. That meant altitude, speed, gravity doing most of the work. And then, somewhere in the missile's descent, on something that would separate it from older technology, maneuver. If it was an anti-ship ballistic missile-type threat, it wouldn't simply fall. It would hunt. Inside the Aegis ships, the system began its cold math. Intercept windows, probabilities, engagement sequences. The question wasn't whether the strike group could fight. The question was whether it had been surprised too late. At 3:23 a.m., the first intercept call was prepared. Weapons crews didn't celebrate. They didn't shout. They didn't feel heroic. They ran checklists, because every person in that room understood what was at stake. This wasn't a destroyer protecting itself. This was a destroyer standing between a weapon and the most valuable ship in the formation. And that carrier, built at staggering cost, the kind of price tag that becomes a political symbol as much as a military asset, was sitting at the center of the ocean, like a floating capital city. At 3:24 a.m., the strike group executed what the public rarely thinks about. It began fighting as one organism. The E-2D Hawkeye, acting as the eyes and battle manager, fed tracks and threat analysis. The Aegis ships took that data and turned it into engagement-quality solutions. Fighter pilots were shaken awake and sprinted toward cockpits, even as the deck crews worked under blackout discipline. Helicopters on the escorts spun up, not for show, but to search the sea surface for the quiet second layer of an attack. Small boats, drones, anything that could be part of the targeting network. Then something unexpected happened. The tracks split again. Now there were two inbound solutions. Two. Either the missile had deployed a decoy, or there were multiple weapons inbound. And in the CIC, one of the operators noticed a detail that made the blood run colder. The inbound profile wasn't behaving like a normal ballistic descent anymore. It was flattening, moving in a way that suggested terminal maneuvering, adjusting its path, hunting for the carrier's future position, not where it used to be. A carrier can move fast. It can turn hard. But a weapon that can update its target can turn the ocean into a trap. At 3:26 a.m., the Aegis destroyer's vertical launch system opened. You never hear the missile leave in a cinematic way from inside the ship. You feel it as a deep mechanical violence through the deck plates. The kind of force that reminds you these ships aren't just metal, they're muscle. The interceptor was an SM-6, a multi-mission missile described as capable of anti-air warfare, terminal ballistic missile defense, and anti-ship strike roles. The reason it matters is simple. In modern combat, flexibility is survival. One weapon, multiple missions, one less delay between detection and engagement. The SM-6 climbed hard, guided by the strike group's network, sensors, links, and command logic stitched together into a single decision. Within seconds, everything changed. The inbound threat continued descending. The interceptor reached toward it at a closing speed that makes human instincts useless. Operators watched symbols on screens, not because screens are dramatic, but because screens are all you have when the real battle is taking place dozens of miles away at the edge of physics. At 3:27 a.m., the first intercept attempt went tight. Then, for a half second, the track did something impossible. It blinked. And in that blink, everyone's mind filled the same terrifying gap. If the missile had gone silent, it could mean it was defeated. Or it could mean it had entered a phase where the strike group could no longer see it clearly. That's the cruelest part of missile defense. Sometimes the scariest moment is not when you see the threat, it's when you don't. At 3:28 a.m., the track reappeared, but shifted. Not gone. Shifted. The decoy theory became real. A second return, nearly identical, was now slightly offset, forcing the Aegis system to make a choice. Which one was the true threat? The TAO's voice stayed level, but the room could hear the weight behind it. Engage, re-engage, confirm. Because if you shoot the wrong one, the right one lives. And if the right one lives, the carrier dies. At 3:29 a.m., the second SM-6 launched. This time, the system had help. The Hawkeye's battle management, the strike group's shared data, and Aegis's detection-to-kill design all converged. And then the most unnatural calm settled over the CIC, because everyone knew the next update would decide the story. At 3:30 a.m., the threat track terminated. Not faded, not drifted. Terminated. A hard kill. But the cheering still didn't come. Because what the crew didn't realize was that the missile attack might never have been designed to hit. It might have been designed to make the carrier reveal itself. Think about it. A modern carrier strike group's greatest strength is its ability to operate as a dispersed network. Its greatest vulnerability is the same thing. Networks emit. Networks communicate. Networks leave patterns. A sophisticated adversary doesn't always need a confirmed kill to win a strategic victory. Sometimes all they need is to force you to react, to light up your sensors, to launch interceptors, to change course, to show, for a few minutes, what your defense really looks like when it's under stress. At 3:33 a.m., as the intercept was confirmed, a new warning appeared. This one from below. One of the escorts reported an intermittent sonar contact. Faint, uncertain. The kind of contact that feels like a whisper, but could be a blade. And suddenly the entire strike group understood the shape of the trap. And the missile had been the distraction. The real danger was the thing you can't see. A submarine doesn't need to win a missile duel. It doesn't need to beat Aegis. It only needs one good firing solution. If a hostile boat had been waiting, silent, while the strike group focused upward, it could be inside torpedo range already. At 3:35 a.m., helicopters lifted off from the escorts, their rotors thundering into the night. They carried dipping sonar and sonobuoys, the tools of underwater hunting. The carrier's own aircraft might be waking for air defense, but now the strike group needed something else. It needed certainty, because uncertainty underwater is how carriers end up as legends. The sonar contact strengthened slightly, then faded again. Classic tactics. A submarine that knows it's being hunted can go quiet. You slip into thermal layers, use the ocean's own physics as cover, and in the confusion of a missile defense engagement, even a small delay can be fatal. At 3:39 a.m., the strike group executed another course change, not because the captain panicked, because geometry matters. Every degree of turn changes a torpedo's intercept problem. It changes the carrier's future position. It forces an attacker to recalculate. But then something unexpected happened. A burst of electronic noise was detected, brief, directional, like someone had turned on a flashlight for half a second and then shut it off. It wasn't random. It was a ping. Not an active sonar ping from the US side. Something else, a transmission, a data link, a momentary attempt to update a firing solution. And that was the first proof that the strike group wasn't dealing with a lone attacker improvising. It was dealing with a coordinated system, a chain. At 3:42 a.m., the Hawkeye updated again. Surface contacts, distant, scattered, moving in patterns that didn't match commercial shipping. The escorts began to suspect the larger picture: unmanned systems, small craft, or distant platforms acting as relays. Because a missile doesn't find a moving ship on its own in the open ocean, it needs eyes. And eyes can be anything now: a drone, a fishing vessel, a satellite queue, a disguised relay ship. At 3:45 a.m., the strike group pushed outward, trying to break the chain by expanding the defensive bubble. The carrier remained the heart, but the escorts became the fists. In this kind of fight, you don't just shoot the arrow. You look for the archer, but the ocean refused to give up its secrets. The sonar contact returned, stronger now, closer. At 3:47 a.m., an escort reported a possible torpedo in the water. That single sentence can change a warship's entire reality. Because a torpedo is not a missile. It doesn't scream across the sky for everyone to see. It comes silently, through water that hides it, until the last moment when it's too late to do anything but pray. Your countermeasures work. The carrier strike group's response was immediate. Decoys deployed. Noisemakers designed to lure the weapon away. Escorts maneuvered to place themselves between the carrier and the threat, not as a symbol, but as a shield. And the carrier, massive, nuclear-powered, capable of projecting air power across continents, did something surprisingly human. It ran. Not away from the fight, away from the geometry of death. At 3:49 a.m., the suspected torpedo track wavered. If it was real, it was either losing guidance or being pulled by decoys. If it was a false contact, it was the kind that still forces you to act, because ignoring it is how ships are lost. And then, in the middle of that underwater panic, the air picture shifted again. Another launch signature, another inbound. The second missile wasn't an afterthought. It was the follow-up, timed perfectly to arrive while the strike group's attention was split between sky and sea. This was the modern way to kill a carrier, not with one perfect shot, but with overload. At 3:52 a.m., the Aegis ships prepared another engagement. But now the strike group was operating under a different psychological weight. The first intercept had worked. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it was terrifying, because it proved something to the attackers. It proved the carrier would defend itself. It proved the strike group would radiate. It proved, in a real-world stress test, what the response looked like. And if the first missile had been a probe, then the second missile might be the spear. At 3:54 a.m., the Hawkeye's crew called out the inbound track, and the Aegis system did what it was built to do: automated, centralized, turning detection into a kill chain with brutal speed. Lockheed Martin. Another SM-6 fired. The weapon that CSIS describes as tri-mission: anti-air, terminal ballistic missile defense, and anti-ship strike, was now being used in the role the public rarely sees but strategists obsess over: stopping something fast, maneuvering, and potentially designed to crack open a supercarrier. At 3:55 a.m., the intercept window tightened, and then the plot did something that made every operator sit up straighter. The inbound missile changed behavior. It began to dive, then level, then dive again. Like it was searching, like it was trying to reacquire, like it had lost the clean track of the carrier and was now hunting through uncertainty. That meant the strike group's maneuvers were working. Or it meant something else. It meant the missile's real targeting source had gone blind. At 3:56 a.m., the sonar contact vanished completely, not faded, vanished. And that was the moment the strike group understood the true turning point. The missile attack wasn't just about destroying a ship. And it was about forcing the strike group to defend in a way that would reveal the hidden attacker. Because underwater, a submarine can stay invisible until it has to transmit, update, or correct. If the strike group had just witnessed a brief electronic burst earlier, and now the submarine contact disappeared as the second missile began searching, it suggested one chilling possibility. The submarine had been the one feeding the missile. And now, as the strike group hunted it, it had cut the link and slipped away. At 3:57 a.m., the second threat track terminated. Another successful intercept. 2 inbound threats, 2 kills. And yet, the atmosphere in CIC wasn't celebration. It was a kind of stunned silence that comes only after you realize you survived something you might not fully understand. Because survival can feel like victory. Until you realize what the enemy just learned. At 4:01 a.m., the strike group began a wide area search, aircraft, helicopters, sensors, and analysts, trying to map the battlefield that had briefly existed around them. But the ocean had already erased most of the fingerprints, no wreckage in sight, no confirmed submarine location, no dramatic explosion on the horizon, just a carrier strike group still floating, still breathing, and still aware of how close the edge had been. And this is the part most people don't expect. The result that shocked everyone wasn't that the carrier was hit. It was that the carrier wasn't, because the old story says aircraft carriers are obsolete the moment a carrier killer exists. But the reality, as this night proved, is more complex. A carrier doesn't sail alone. It sails inside a moving architecture of sensors and weapons. E-2 aircraft extending the fleet's vision and battle management, Aegis ships built for detection-to-kill integration, and interceptors like the SM-6 that can serve multiple missions depending on what the threat demands. That night didn't end the debate over carriers. It sharpened it. Because the strike group's success came at a cost you can't see in an explosion. It came at the cost of revealing the choreography of defense. Which sensors lit up first? Which links carried what data? How quickly interceptors launched? How the carrier maneuvered? How the escorts repositioned? Every reaction is a clue. Every omission is a signature. Every successful defense is also a broadcast. This is how we fight. And somewhere beyond the horizon, someone was almost certainly watching. Who recording? Learning. At 4:10 a.m., flight operations resumed in a controlled rhythm, but nothing felt routine anymore. The deck was still the deck. The jets were still jets. The sea was still black. But every sailor on watch knew something had shifted. They had lived through a modern attempt, whether a true strike or a high-end probe, to complete the most dangerous chain in naval warfare. Find the carrier. Fix the carrier. Finish the carrier. And the strike group had broken that chain twice. But the thought that lingered long after the screens went back to normal was the same thought that haunts every Navy on Earth. What if next time the salvo is bigger? What if the decoys are smarter? What if the submarine doesn't blink? Because the ocean is wide and carriers are powerful. But in the end, the world's most expensive warship is still just a moving point on someone else's screen. And the next time that point lights up at 3:17 a.m.,